So if you want to spend a jolly hour on the trolley, go to Dallas.
Go to Big D.
Yeah, gotta be one reason to go there, I guess.
That's news at 5.
You'll be here with Sylvan at 6?
At 6 o'clock.
Right.
Join
I'll
us
see you
then.
again tonight at 10.
How's this for a guarantee? At Star, we don't just guarantee furniture, we guarantee your happiness. Live with your furniture for up to 7 days. It either looks right in your home, or we'll take it back.
Can you afford not to shop at Star? Star Furniture, Star Furniture.
Hey, Texas, why do you think the Chevy full-size pickup outsells Ford here?
It's a better looking truck.
It's a bigger truck. It'll carry more.
It's roomier.
It rides better.
It's better looking.
It hauls better.
It's priced right.
It's more powerful.
It's better looking.
And it's got $750 cash back. Chevy, not Ford, is #1 here, and the reasons are obvious. But check it out for yourself. Have you driven both lately? See your Chevy First Team dealer now.
New outrage at cigarette sponsorship of sporting events. The Kremlin is worried against possible violence this weekend in Soviet demonstrations, and Jose Napoleon Duarte of El Salvador is dead. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. Quote, blood money. Those blunt words from Health Secretary Louis Sullivan today describing tobacco company sponsorship of sporting events. Pressing his attack against cigarette smoking, Dr. Sullivan called on advertising agencies, universities, and other institutions to, quote, shun the temptation of this tainted money, stained by addiction, disease, and death, unquote. Correspondent Mark Phillips has our report.
For years, tobacco companies have been pouring big money into sporting events, trading on excitement and glory, and many say, selling death. Not the Soccer Cup, but the Marlboro Soccer Cup. Not the Women's Tennis Tour, but the Virginia Slims Women's Tennis Tour.
During the average period of a championship tennis match, approximately 100 people will die from diseases caused by cigarette smoking.
Today, Louis Sullivan joined the chorus of groups calling for an end to cigarette sponsorship of sporting events.
This blood money should not be used to foster a misleading impression that smoking is compatible with good health.
Having been denied the advertising equivalent of the overhead smash, DirecTV advertising, the tobacco companies have gone for the equivalent of the drop shot, the sponsoring of events, becoming almost synonymous with them. It's the last way to get cigarette brand names on TV. Tennis courts now look like tobacco shops. Racing cars resemble cigarette boxes. The industry defends its sponsorship, saying it's not trying to convince people to smoke, it's simply promoting a legal product.
We've never asked our players to smoke. We've never asked them to endorse smoking. Quite simply, we asked them to go out and play the best tennis that they're capable of.
The fans would not be out here watching incredible tennis today if it wasn't for Philip Morris.
But those arguments are a literal smokescreen. The opponents of tobacco sponsorship say it's a clear case of targeting the young market.
Last night in Los Angeles was the Marlboro Cup soccer match aimed at the young Hispanic male.
The sports audiences may be sophisticated enough to separate the sponsor from the event.
Actually, I feel bad coming to an event like this sponsored by Virginia Slims.
There's no legal force behind today's call for tobacco companies to get out of sports promotion. In the meantime, opponents say they should change the name of the events and call them what they really are. Mark Phillips, CBS News, Washington.
Dr. Louis Sullivan, Secretary of Health and Human Services, is in our Washington studio tonight. Dr. Sullivan, you've seized on this issue of the danger of cigarettes and pounded away at it. Why this subject? Why now?
Dan, it's a question both of personal responsibility of our citizens, getting the right information so that they can change their own health behavior, and a question of corporate responsibility. Our corporations have a responsibility to contribute to the health of our citizens and not push products that impair their health and cause death.
Let me play devil's advocate for a moment. There are going to be people who smoke. There are people who want to smoke. Why shouldn't a cigarette company go after those customers? That's the American way.
What the companies do as they push these products is entice our young people, our minorities, blue-collar workers, and others, enticing them to smoke by projecting images showing smoking, associating that with success, with being appealing, and certainly that induces young people to smoke. 90% of adults who smoke started as teenagers.
Dr. Sullivan, you are part of the Bush administration. You're part of the United States government. On the one hand, President Bush's administration and our government subsidizes the growing of tobacco. On the other hand, cabinet members such as yourself attacks the tobacco industry. Does the left hand know what the right hand is doing? How can you reconcile this?
Well, Dan, my responsibility is as a chief health officer of the United States. I have a responsibility to our country and to each of our citizens to see that they get the appropriate information so that they can undertake appropriate personal behavior to protect their health and to enhance it. So certainly we need to make our citizens aware of the dangers of these products.
Dr. Lou Sullivan, thanks for being with us tonight. Still to come on the CBS Evening News, correspondent Bert Quint on why the Israelis are making fun of Gorbachev and why the Arabs are not laughing. And Jerry Bowen on why Jean Kane is outside every day in bitter Alaskan weather throwing fish around in her yard.
Sir, did you eat all the crackling oat bran? Once again, sir, did you eat all the crackling oat bran? Please, sir, did you eat all the crackling oat bran?
Would you repeat the question, please? With the crunchy sweet taste of Kellogg's Cracklin' Oat Bran, an open box is an empty box.
It's no laughing matter. Motor oil on your carpet, or food stains, or pet stains. Time for Woolite Spot and Stain Carpet Cleaner. New with exceptional cleaning power on so many tough stains. Woolite, it's serious cleaning.
Energy. It comes from a balanced diet that contains B vitamins. B vitamins help turn food into energy. To be sure you're getting enough, take Theragran M. It's packed with 50% more of each B vitamin than other leading brands. Theragran M high-potency multivitamins with minerals from Squibb helps unleash your energy.
Now for your Maalox Moments breakthrough news. A big splash of cherry and a burst of mint. New Cherry Cream and Mint Cream Extra Strength Maalox Plus. Now the strongest antacid has terrific new tastes. Strong relief for all your Maalox Moments.
Former President Jimmy Carter arrived in Nicaragua today, one of 2,500 foreign observers for Sunday's important elections. The opposition said today it will accept a victory by Sandinista President Daniel Ortega if the vote is free and the count fair. CBS News correspondent Juan Vasquez is our man in Managua.
If this street corner debate is any guide, Election Day can't get here soon enough for most Nicaraguans. He's eager to vote against the Sandinistas because he doesn't like communism and he doesn't like the draft. The Sandinistas have given us everything, she interrupts. They deserve our vote. Soon a crowd gathers, and in what 6 months ago would have been unthinkable, they settled it democratically with a show of hands. It's hard to tell who won, but what's important is that after more than 10 years of war, revolution, and counter-revolution, the Sandinistas have opened up the political process.
But if I was fighting for 8 years, now I believe I can give peace a chance. I can talk to my enemy.
The Sandinistas hope that after Sunday's vote, the 10,000 Contra troops who haven't laid down their arms will have a reason to end the war. The fighting has left nearly 30,000 dead. It has also left a legacy of misery, an economy in ruins, and a per capita income among the lowest in the Western Hemisphere. It will take a massive infusion of foreign aid to revive this shattered economy. The government has allowed more than 1,000 foreign observers into this small country to guarantee a fair election. The Sandinistas hope that if they win the election, they will also win the right to claim Western aid. And most observers think the vote will be fair.
We hope and expect them to vote in large numbers with confidence that their decision will be observed and respected.
The key to winning the election is winning the youth vote, since 20% of the voters are under the age of 25. They don't know much about democracy, but then neither do most Nicaraguans, because no one here can remember the last time there was a free election. Juan Vasquez, CBS News, Managua.
Jose Napoleon Duarte, former president of El Salvador, died today. He'd had a long battle with cancer. He was 64. CBS News correspondent Doug Tennell tries to put in perspective now Duarte's long struggle to build a middle class, middle ground, and bring democracy to his Central American nation.
By the time Jose Napoleon Duarte was diagnosed as suffering from terminal cancer in 1988, he had led the tiny nation of El Salvador through some of its darkest days. President and Mrs. Bush lauded Duarte as the father of Salvadoran democracy in a statement today. The 64-year-old Notre Dame graduate had pledged to continue his political struggle even as his health was fading away.
I will continue working up to the last moment in which I'll make sure that democracy will be established permanently in my country. This is my aim, this is my will, this is my wish.
It was a wish that never quite came true, despite Duarte's firm friendship with the United States throughout the Reagan years. On one of his last visits to Washington, Duarte showed his appreciation for U.S. aid to his government that once totaled over $500 million a year. It was just the kind of gesture that compelled many in Central America to consider Duarte a U.S. puppet who had a hand in years of repression. But that was not the perception of Duarte in official Washington.
Many people in Congress felt that Duarte's credentials as a sincere Democrat were so good and so strong that he should be given a chance to try and solve El Salvador's problems.
Duarte came to office in 1984 promising peace, but he presided over years of war instead. Talks with El Salvador's Marxist guerrillas broke down, and the fighting continues even today. El Salvador remains desperately poor and deeply troubled. It is perhaps the greatest tragedy of Jose Napoleon Duarte's death that all the problems he set out to solve survive him. Doug Tennell, CBS News, Miami.
Word today of 2 U.S. Army helicopter crashes in Panama this week. They killed a total of 11 U.S. soldiers. In both cases, it's believed bad weather may have been a factor. The U.S. Southern Command says the choppers had run into thunderstorms while on a training mission Wednesday night.
Look at me, enjoying corn on the cob, thanks to Super Polygrip.
While you can't eat everything, Super Polygrip helps hold dentures in tight.
Thanks to Super Polygrip, I still enjoy my favorite food.
Because of high cholesterol, 1 out of 4 adults is gambling with heart disease. 1 out of 4. You can leave it to chance, or you can do something about it. Diets low in cholesterol and saturated fats can actually help reduce your cholesterol and odds of heart disease. Fleischmann's margarine has 0 cholesterol, low saturated fat. Fleischmann's margarine, because your heart is in your hands.
The airbag. If it's good enough for Nissan's Infiniti, why not Sentra or Stanza? Only Chrysler Corporation has a driver's side airbag standard on every car it builds in the U.S.
There's a lot of talk about oat bran these days. Some people say it can be very good for you, others aren't sure how good. And then there are those who still want to study the situation. Look, I've been eating Common Sense oat bran for a while. Tastes great. Common Sense has nearly twice as much oat bran as oatmeal. And until somebody gives me one good reason to stop eating this stuff, pass the milk.
It's about time for some common sense.
Groups demanding more change faster are planning demonstrations all over the Soviet Union this Sunday, demanding democratic changes and faster revival of the economy. Today, Soviet officials warned that hardline anti-reform groups could try to disrupt those rallies. CBS News Moscow correspondent Barry Peterson reports The Gorbachev government is planning a massive show of police muscle.
There was an ominous message behind this Soviet television broadcast showing riot troops in training. The message? That Soviet officials are bracing for trouble from demonstrations that may bring hundreds of thousands into the streets on Sunday in dozens of Soviet cities. For the last 24 hours on radio and television, announcers have been reading a Central Committee warning that the protest might be tainted by, quote, disorders and hooliganism. Some believe Mikhail Gorbachev is encouraging the demonstrations to show grassroots anger with the conservatives who are blocking his reforms, but the protest may backfire.
If these demonstrations become unruly, violent, confrontational, as they might because anti-reform forces are mobilizing their people in the streets too, that could deal a bad blow to Gorbachev and increase the demand that the reforms be stopped because they're leading to disorder in the country.
Today, the defense minister condemned what he called attempts by extremists to attack communist rule. To some, that sounds like fair warning that trouble could bring a military crackdown. Reformers said tonight they plan to go on with their protest. Soviet authorities are not taking any chances. There are reports tonight that troops stationed near major cities will be on alert and that special riot police patrolling the crowds will be armed. Barry Peterson, CBS News, Moscow.
When Mikhail Gorbachev eased Soviet travel restrictions, he touched off a Jewish exodus. Today, the West Bank settlement of Ariel announced it is expanding to accommodate more Soviet immigrants. Attempts to entice Soviet Jews to settle in the occupied territories has angered Arabs who say it will damage prospects for peace. Correspondent Bert Quint has a report.
What a fun place to raise your kids, boasts this commercial aimed at the thousands of Soviet Jews coming to Israel every month. Nowhere does this videotape, pitched to new immigrants, mention that this particular home of gracious living happens to be in the Gaza Strip, and that just a few minutes away, action of another kind abounds. The attempt to get newcomers to settle in the lands Israel conquered from its Arab neighbors is just beginning, but already it has brought cries of foul from Moscow. The Soviets, under pressure from their Arab friends, complain that the more Israel builds up the Jewish population in the occupied territories, the less likely it will be to negotiate with the Arabs for their return. This is the biggest wave of immigration, or aliyah, as the Israelis call it, since the 1950s, and hardliners, like the Prime Minister, see it as a means of holding on to the West Bank and Gaza Strip.
The big aliyah that we are facing now requires a strong Israel, not a Palestinian state, but a strong state of Israel.
There appears to be no government program for steering the new immigrants to the occupied territories, and so far few have moved there. But if the flow continues, there soon could be thousands.
Certainly the advent, the influx of new immigrants will strengthen our community. And it creates facts that are irreversible.
As for the Soviet immigrants who are settling in, they are lured by the chance for the house in the suburbs they couldn't even dream of back home.
The Russian Jew, when he comes to Israel, becomes a free man, and he has a right to choose where to settle.
Israeli television took a lighter view of the controversy by imagining another Russian beset by problems at home joining the exodus. But to Palestinians who fear the population edge that is their strongest weapon in the occupied territories is being eroded, it's no laughing matter. Bert Quint, CBS News, Tel Aviv.
Whoa.
Years ago, for minor arthritis pain, my doctor recommended the pain reliever and prescription Motrin. Today, he recommends Motrin IB.
Motrin IB, no prescription needed.
It's powerful relief from minor arthritis pain.
Motrin IB, doctor-recommended pain relief.
If I told you my pantyhose could go through an obstacle course like this without a snag, you'd say, no way. And I'd say, no nonsense.
Pantyhose that last are no nonsense.
I got a phone call this morning from one of our oldest customers. He fired us. After 20 years, he fired us. Said he didn't know us anymore. I think I know why. We used to do business with a handshake, face to face. Now it's a phone call and a fax. Get back to you later. With another fax, probably. Well, folks, Something's got to change. That's why we're going to set out for a little face-to-face chat with every customer we have.
But Ben, that's got to be over 200 cities.
I don't care. Thanks.
If you're the kind of business that still believes personal service deserves a lot more than lip service, welcome to United.
Larry. Lewis.
That's the way we've been doing business for over 60 years.
Ben, where are you going? To visit that old friend who fired us this morning.
United. Come fly the friendly skies.
When U.S. governors gather for their annual winter meeting tomorrow, the subject of schools and how to improve them is expected to be high on the agenda. The governors are still looking for help from President Bush, and as correspondent Richard Threlkeld reports, that may mean frustration and even accusations of betrayal.
Education is the one investment that means more.
If you thought what President Bush said about education in his State of the Union address sounded familiar, it wasn't your imagination.
The United States must increase the high school graduation rate to no less than 90%.
Before this decade is out, states should reduce their high school dropout rates to less than 10%. A big task? You bet.
Now as then, the goals are ambitious and generally agreed upon. As developed by the nation's governors and the president at last fall's first ever education summit, they also include better preschooling and school discipline, periodic testing, improving adult literacy, and making American kids the best in the world in math and science. But as the governors prepare to meet this weekend, they're still wondering how much help they can expect from Washington to achieve those goals.
Goals are fine, but how are we going to get there? And the extent to which the federal government is unwilling to step forward and talk about means, including financing those means, is the extent to which a good many governors are going to feel, indeed even betrayed, by what they fear may turn into nothing more than a public relations event.
And so far, the Bush administration hasn't done much to allay those fears. Even with an increase in funds for the Head Start program, it has budgeted less money for education this year than last, when inflation's taken into account. Meantime, the governors have been spending what money they've got tinkering with new ways to fix what's wrong with American schools. Teacher incentives, getting business involved, penalizing school dropouts or their parents.
I believe with all my heart that nearly every problem in American education is being solved by somebody somewhere today. And what we've got to do is take these things we know that work and figure out how to implement them everywhere.
Most of all here, America's inner cities, where traditionally kids most in need of a better education get the worst of it.
Unless we can direct our thinking toward insulating families in poverty more than we do from the detrimental effects of that, we're going to continue to have serious trouble with kids that schools cannot repair.
And it's with these kids that the battle to achieve our nation's education goals will be won or lost. Big task? You bet. But the worst thing would be to do what we've too often done before.
Just by setting goals, if we develop a panacea that says, all right, that's fine, the president has spoken, we're all now inspired and we'll go back and do our work, that's dangerous.
This time, though, the governors insist they're dedicated not to just setting goals, but to making sure we reach them, to ensure that a good education for every American child is a possible dream. Richard Threlkeld, CBS News, New York.
President Bush let it be known today he will nominate Arthur Fletcher as the new chairman of the Civil Rights Commission. Fletcher has been mentioned for the post for months, even since former Chairman William Allen became involved in a controversy on an Indian reservation and then resigned. Fletcher is prominent in Republican politics in the District of Columbia, where he once ran unsuccessfully for mayor. In Carrollton, Kentucky today, a judge sentenced Larry Mahoney to 16 years in prison for causing the deaths of 27 people in what's called the nation's worst drunk driving accident. The 36-year-old Mahoney was driving his pickup truck in the wrong direction down an interstate highway when he plowed into a school bus in May 1988. 24 teenagers and 3 adults were killed. Mahoney could be eligible for parole in 8 years.
I was eating a cheeseburger when I saw I had a runaway car. It was a Maalox moment. Thank heaven Maalox Plus is so strong.
Easy, boys. She's purring like a kitten.
Maalox Plus, strong relief for all your Maalox moments. And now for your Maalox moments, breakthrough news. A big splash of cherry and a burst of mint. New cherry cream and mint cream extra strength Maalox Plus. Now the strongest antacid has terrific new tastes. Strong relief for all your Maalox moments.
To get rid of her gray, my wife can spend 40 minutes. But I discovered the 5-minute hair coloring.
The revolutionary discovery called Just for Men from the leader in men's hair coloring. Simply apply Just for Men and in 5 minutes shampoo out.
Gray is blended away. The look of my natural color is back in 5 minutes. That was me, and it won't fade or wash out.
My hair takes forever, but you look great in just 5 minutes.
The look of your natural color in just 5 minutes with Just for Men.
Ever since Unisom, people have abandoned their old sleep medicine because medical tests prove people fall asleep faster and sleep better all night with Unisom than without. Take Unisom for faster, better sleep.
Millions of people in the prime of their lives have used Bengay to help relieve minor arthritis pain. You've just been looking at 2 of them. Bengay, relieving arthritis pain for nearly a century.
In the vanishing wilderness of nature's world in this 20th century, vanishing lands, vanishing species, there is a handful of success stories. None is brighter than the return of the bald eagle from the edge of extinction. In Alaska alone, there are now more than 30,000 eagles, and nowhere does that proud bird find a friendlier haven than on one spit of land. Jerry Bowen has been there.
If you're looking for majestic eagles soaring on the wind, eagles regally holding court, or not so regally stuffing themselves, there's no better place than Gene Keen's backyard. Bald eagles of every kind here, grizzled veterans, brown-headed youngsters, even gimpy ones. Gene Keen, the eagle lady of Homer Spit, feeds them all.
Pete's only got 1 foot, and Pirate's got a stiff leg.
Homer Spit is a rocky finger of land stretching out in Kachemak Bay, safe harbor for the fishing fleets, safe haven for the sea otters, and for 66-year-old Gene Keen. For 12 years, she's lived in the comfortable clutter of Alaskan bric-a-brac, watched the eagles perched on the oil tanks and the piles of Alaskan timber bound for Asia, and made her own pact with nature.
We've taken a lot away from all of our wildlife, their nesting areas and their feeding areas, and I just feel in the wintertime, when the going gets tough for them, that they can use a helping hand.
So she feeds 400 eagles a day, along with scores of freeloading seagulls, feeds them hundreds of pounds of freezer-burned cod and herring, donated by her boss down at the fish processing plant. And she works alone, driving and loading, thawing and cutting, 6 hours a day, 7 days a week, all winter long, all Alaskan winter long.
You see her 50 below, out there feeding those birds. Pretty concerned with the birds and their well-being.
1 year, I had a broken leg, and they didn't come until after I put the food out the 1st of January. And that kind of worked on crutches that year.
The one-time rodeo trick rider and truck driver hauls up the driftwood for the eagles to rest on, puts up the signs to keep the tourists back. And when her right arm wears out, she becomes a lefty.
I'm kind of a tough old broad, though, Jerry.
And even though feeding wildlife is officially frowned on, an exception's been made for her, especially since the Valdez oil spill.
We had probably 150 known eagles, that succumbed due to oil this summer. So in a sense, she's perhaps atoning for some of the problems we've caused in the past.
A few people say it's gotten out of hand. Too many eagles, too much of a mess.
The seagulls don't carry 5-pound fish heads around and drop them around in people's yards. The eagles do that.
The feeding frenzy doesn't end till the middle of April or the 1st of May. That's when the warm weather comes back to Homer Spit, and the eagles go back to their nesting grounds around the bay, and once again start fending for themselves. Until then, they have a good friend in Gene Keen.
When I look out there and see all these birds knowing that they're not going to go to bed hungry, it's a lot of work, but there's a lot of satisfaction to it.
The eagle lady, maybe the toughest bird of them all. Jerry Bowen, CBS News, Homer Spit, Alaska.
And that's the news from our world tonight. Bob Schieffer will be here tomorrow, followed later by Saturday night with Connie Chung. Connie Chung will have the news Sunday just before 60 Minutes. And a special programming note, Paula Zahn joins our friend Harry Smith on CBS This Morning, Monday morning. Dan Rather, I'm going fishing, but I'll see you again Monday night. Good night.
This is CBS.